Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. You are here for the HoneyBook Automations webinar. Super exciting stuff. We just revamped the tool. So really excited to introduce you guys to some of the changes that we've made there. We're going to talk all about how to save time while still remaining super flexible and customized for your different client conversations and how you like to communicate with your clients. So pretty exciting stuff. I've seen several questions come through already about the customization available there and what things have changed. So I'm looking forward to introducing you guys to those changes. Okay, so formerly known as workflows in HoneyBook. So there's three major changes that came with this update. The first of which is obviously the name. You guys probably picked up on that pretty quickly. So we changed the name from workflows to automations. That's the first change. The second change is we've allowed more preview and edit capabilities within the automations tool. So when you go to connect an email to your automation, you'll now have the ability to preview and edit that template, which will not affect the master template at all. It will just be essentially using that template for that specific instance of the automation and being able to make any edits or adjustments to that for that specific instance. So similar to how email templates work when you go to send it to a client now, that's how it'll work in automations as well. You'll be able to preview the email, edit the email, and then save it to be used in that automation. So there's customization there. There's also the ability to edit the workflow or the automation for a specific project that you apply it to. So inside of the workspace, when you go to apply the automation, you'll also have the ability to edit specific email instances there, or even add steps, remove steps, and completely customize the automation for the specific instance of the client that you're working with. So that's new. And then the other main change is going to be the actual builder itself. So we did a redesign, so it looks a lot cleaner. It's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot easier to use, a lot easier to understand kind of what you're doing and when things are going to happen. So those are the three changes, okay? The name change, the builder, and then the ability to preview and edit either in the builder itself, so as you're creating the automation template, or when you go to actually apply the automation to a project. So we're going to go through all of that in detail, but I just wanted to kind of level set and introduce you guys to those changes verbally before we go ahead and dive in. So our agenda today, I'm going to go through the general kind of pre-work essentially that needs to happen in order to successfully set up an automation for your business. So there's kind of 5 steps in HoneyBook to do. So I'll go through all of those 5 steps. And as we're going through those 5 steps, I'll be introducing you to the new changes in the automations tool. And then we'll go into how to actually, the kind of final step of that is applying the automation. So we'll go into the intricacies of how you can edit and adjust that specific automation for whatever client you might be working with and whatever project you're working on. And then I'll be saving 10 minutes at the end for any questions that you guys have. So feel free to continue to put your questions in the question area or pop them into the chat. With as noisy as the chat has been, which I totally love, you guys can absolutely continue to do that. I would probably recommend just adding the questions as a question so that it's easier for me to find at the end, and that'll make sure that I have an easier time finding your question and can answer it at the end for you. So that's probably what I'll suggest, just because everyone is really chatty, which I am loving the energy. It helps me because then I feel like I'm not just talking into a black hole. So keep it coming. If you have any questions, just go ahead and pop them into the question area, and then I'll get to them in the last 10 minutes. I will say sometimes if you save your questions for the last 20 minutes of the webinar, that's usually when it'll be a little bit more relevant, because obviously I have a lot that I'm going to go through today, and your question might be answered in kind of our regularly scheduled program. So if you want to save questions to the last 20 minutes, you can do that too. All righty. Let's dive in. So I talked about the changes that came with the new automations update. And then I also teased a little bit to the 5 steps that need to happen in HoneyBook in order to successfully build an automation. Okay, so if I have any note takers out there today, This is where you might want to start taking some notes. So basically step number 1 is building out your project types. And I'm going to go through all of these as well, but just to give you guys an idea of how we're going to go through this content today. Okay. So building out your project types. Then you're going to connect your project types or a single project type to the contact form. Then you're going to want to build out your templates. So all of the templates that you plan to use when you're communicating with your clients. So in automations, you can send brochures and questionnaires, or you can send an email. So you want to make sure all your questionnaires and brochures and email templates are built out. Okay, so project types, contact form, build out your templates, build out your automation, and then connect your automation. Okay, so there's a lot of pre-work that needs to happen before you ever even click on that automation tab, which is where I think people start to feel like, oh my gosh, this is really, it's a lot. But it's not if you go in the correct order and if you really kind of understand the process and understand how you want to communicate with your clients. And we can take baby steps too. You don't have to like build Rome in a day kind of a thing. We can, you can get your project types and your contact form set up first and make sure that that process kind of works. And then you can go into fine tuning all your templates and making sure all your communication is looking good. And then and then maybe you need to go back and kind of fix things a little bit. And then the final step is like, okay, now that all that other stuff is good, I can automate this. And that's when you click into automations, you build out the sequence of steps, and then you connect it to a project. Okay, so let's go through it. So like I said, the first step in building out your automation is going to be setting up your project types. So if you guys actually, since you're all so chatty, I love it. Would you mind just popping into the chat and letting me know just yes or no, were you using workflows before we did the name change? Just pop a yes into the chat if you were using workflows when it was workflows, and pop a no into the chat if you were not using workflows when it was workflows. Okay, a good mix. But I am seeing a lot of no's, which is actually good news because then my 5 steps will be relevant. So awesome. Okay, cool. So the first step that you want to start out with, like I said, is the project types. Okay. And I'm, again, going to give kind of a general broad brush idea here of how to build out automations for your business. Now, the way I'm going to show you might not be exactly the way that you need to do it for your business. At the end of the day, you're the one who knows your business better than anyone. So you're going to have to use some, assessment to decide if this is the way that you want to do it. But general rule of thumb, if you want to be truly, truly automated when it comes to your process, project types is going to be like the deciding factor between really automating your process and still having some manual steps. So I'm going to show you how to do almost like a full hands-off communication, at least when it comes to your inquiries. Okay. And that all starts with your project types. So in order to get to your project types, you're going to hover over your profile picture and you're going to come down to company settings. And then over here in the preferences tab, you'll find your project types. Okay, and you can edit this list to reflect whatever you'd like it to reflect. So project types in HoneyBook, if you're not familiar, are meant to help you categorize the different jobs that you take on. So it helps you categorize the work that you do, the clients that you work with, the different packages you offer. There's a lot of different ways to think about it. So I'll give you guys a couple examples to make it easy, okay? So it completely depends on your business. So I was helping onboard last year at some point a woman who works with high schoolers to help them basically prep for college. So she's like a pre-college like tutor, but she also does a lot of like resume stuff with them as they start to apply for jobs and as they start to apply for college. She helps them with their applications and all of the tutoring aspects as well. So for her, obviously, there's a lot of different ways that she could organize it. But what she decided to do with her project types was she just listed out the different grades because she only works with, freshmen to 12th grade. And then sometimes she works with people who were in junior college looking to apply to like their their bachelor's degree or whatever. So she had like 5 different categories as her project type. So she had freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then she had her junior college. And those were her project types. Okay. Another example might be, now this is a little bit easier for me to do because there's just a couple different niches of it. So photography, right? You're a photographer. Your project types might look like newborn, family, bridal, boudoir, graduation, professional headshots. Like those are all your different project types. However, if you are a niche photographer where you only do boudoir or you only do wedding photography, your project types might actually then be your packages. So you can see how it wouldn't make sense if you're a wedding photographer to just have one project type that says wedding photography. You would want to list out the different project type options within your niche of wedding photography. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to handle this. I'll give you one final example just to kind of drive it home. Hopefully this is kind of starting to make sense and starting to get some gears turning in your head about how project types can work for your business. So I was working with a dog walker, getting her onto the HoneyBook system. And she had 3 different cities that she serviced. And she had 4 packages within each of those cities. So she only had 4 packages. So she could have done her 4 packages as her project types. But because you can do up to 17 project types, she decided to do the 4 packages within each of those 3 cities. So she ended up with 12 project types. Okay. So she said, San Francisco, package A, San Francisco, package B, San Francisco, package C, San Francisco, package D, and then did the same thing for San Jose, and then did the same thing for East Bay, basically. So that's another way you can organize it, because location was one factor for her business that was really crucial. She needed to know how many San Francisco clients at a glance she had versus San Jose versus East Bay. Obviously, as you can imagine, she has to go to all those different areas. So location was a really crucial piece, and project types will show up in your master pipeline as one of those columns that you can filter by. So that was really helpful for her. So again, you can get creative about how you want to do the project types for your specific business. There are a lot of different ways that you can organize it, but essentially the idea why we are starting here, right? This is kind of important for me to define. Why are we starting with the project types? We're starting here because the more insight HoneyBook has to who your clients are, the more specific you can be when you need to automate your communication. So to go and elaborate on that a little bit more, if my dog walking client wanted to automate the way that she followed up with her San Francisco package C clients, she needs to have that project type so that she can trigger an automation to send to those specific individuals about that package and that location. Okay, so the more specific you get here, the more specific you can get when it comes to your automations and how you want to follow up with those clients and how you want to communicate with them. Okay, so that's the idea. That's why we're starting here today. Okay, so get your project type set up. That's kind of step number 1. And for some of you, again, project types might not be the way that you want to automate. Maybe you don't want to automate based off of that. Maybe you just want to say, hey, everyone who fills out my contact form, I just want them to get the same 3 emails or the same 3 brochures or 1 brochure with all my options and then a couple follow-up emails. That's totally an option as well. But I'm just saying, if you wanted to get really, really nitty gritty and automate every style of communication you can have with your clients, project types is where you want to start. Okay, so just giving you all the information. Again, you can do with it as you please. We're just going to start here because this is how you would basically hand off your communication to HoneyBook if that was what you wanted to do. Okay, and specifically when it comes to your inquiries, because project types can be connected to the contact form. Okay, so this is step number 2. I saw somebody was asking about the different steps. So step number 1 is project types, getting those set up. Step number 2 is getting your contact form to connect to the project types, okay? So inside of your contact form, whenever you go to add a question, you can drop down to the suggested question types. And these are all going to be your smart fields, okay? These are your smart questions. These are the questions that HoneyBook will not only collect into the system, but will also help fill in information in, say, your payment schedule or your contract or anything else with your client. And you'll notice project type is one of the questions we can add here. So you can ask your clients, let's see, what package best fits your needs? And this is my question that's tied to the project type field. So all of you today, you're going to go in, you're going to fix up your project types. You're going to go into the contact form and you're going to audit your contact form. The easiest way to do it is just to pop into the suggested question area and make sure that the project type question is already added. And then in order to find the project type question, you just hover over the two circles that are interconnected until you find the one that says project type. Okay, and then this drop-down list will be the project types that you just edited, which is why we started there, because you cannot edit the list in your contact form. So you edit the list first, then you add the question to your contact form. Now you can phrase this question however you'd like. If you're my client who decided to say location and package, this question makes sense. What package best fits your needs? If you are someone who is a niche photographer, you might want to say, which of the following are you most interested in hearing more about? There are a lot of different ways to word that so that it stays in line with how you like to communicate with your clients again. But the idea here is, and maybe it's not package based at all, right? Maybe if you're my tutor, you just say, what grade best describes your child, or what grade are you in? So you can adjust the question however you want. All you have to do is click your cursor in and type to get that to change. So that's one way to connect the project type to the contact form. There is a second option for connecting project types to the contact form, and it's a little bit more advanced. So you'll pop up here to the settings, and you can actually assign a project type to a specific contact form. So I'll give you another example. I am working with a bounce house company in San Luis Obispo, and they have like 15 different slides and bounce houses and like water park things that they rent out to their clients. So each of those items are their project types. And what they've done is they've created a contact form for every single one of those packages so that their clients directly from the website can click inquire here about like their tropical bounce house, and it takes them to a contact form specific for that item, just so that they can speed along that booking process. With HoneyBook, there's no instant booking option. So that's how they've decided to speed it up, is they've created a contact form, which if you didn't know, you can create multiple contact forms. You can have as many as you want. So they have 15 contact forms, each of which is the different bounce house or water park or slide that they rent out. And then within each of those contact forms, they have attached the appropriate project types. So they've created their project types, created a contact form to match each of those project types, and then they've gone into the contact form and connected the project type. Okay, and the reason for this is because they want their clients, when they inquire, to start receiving automations based off of that project type. So they could just include, a drop down that says, which bounce house are you interested in renting, and then trigger the workflows that way. But the way their website was set up is to have a picture of the bounce house, a description of it, and then an inquire here button. So they have a couple different options for how their clients can inquire. So you could do something like that as well. But the idea here is, if you didn't want to include this question, if this seems odd to include, or you just can't make sense of it for your specific business model, you can do kind of like a behind the scenes version of it, where you say this contact form is tied to this specific project type. Okay, so that's an option. Basically, you would include the project type question on the contact form if you wanted your clients to let you know who they are or what they're inquiring about or what they're interested in. Or you could, if you don't want your clients to do that, you would assign the project type, because it doesn't make sense for your clients to let them know, because you know who they are because they're filling out this specific contact form. Okay, so hopefully that kind of makes sense. Those are the two options there. So project types, then connect it to the contact form, either with the SMART question or by assigning the project type to the specific contact form. Okay, so that's step 1 and step 2. Step 3. Step 3 is 100% where you are going to spend the majority of your time when you're getting ready to set up an automation, okay? And that is because step 3 is building out your templates. How are you going to communicate with your clients? So again, we talked about automations. You can send a questionnaire, you can send a brochure file, or you can send an email. And each of the files that you send, so a questionnaire and a brochure, have to be sent in an email. So you'll need an email template for that as well. So every time you build a questionnaire for an automation, you need to build an email that goes with it. So every time you build a file, you have to build 2 things basically, because that's how HoneyBook works. When you send a file, you have to have an email ready to go, so that you need to have that queued up in the automation basically. So you need to have all of that built out before you ever click on the automations page. So what are questionnaires? What are brochures? How can you be starting to think about this? Okay, so if we wanted to build like a very basic level automation for your business, we would just build out basically a simple way to communicate with your inquiries. So let's say you wanted to, all of your people who inquire about package B as their project type from the contact form, you want them to receive a brochure that introduces your business, outlines what package B includes, and maybe has a couple add-on items to try to upsell. Okay, and then you also want to have an email template attached to that, thanking them for inquiring and saying, here are some more details about the package B. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so you would need to build that out. So what I always recommend when you're trying to come up with your automation and how you want to communicate with your clients, before you even kind of get here, I personally, even though I'm a total tech nerd, I would literally sit down with either Post-its or a piece of paper and a pencil, and I would start sketching out my steps of how I want my clients to hear from me. They inquire through my website. Then what? Well, based off of who they are, I send this. And if they're this person, I send this. And then after I send that, I like to follow up with them in 3 days. And then if I still haven't heard from them, I might give them a call. And then if I still haven't heard from them, I might archive them. Okay, so just sit down and map out and sketch out those different options that you have and kind of figure out just a general map of how you might want to begin to communicate with your clients through automation. So again, if I was going to do something really basic, I probably wouldn't even build a brochure. I kind of got a little ahead of myself there just because brochures are like my favorite feature in HoneyBook. If you were looking to do something really simple, you would probably just create a thank you email to say, thank you so much for inquiring, and maybe include a link to schedule a call with you through HoneyBook's scheduling tool. So you would have an email template that says, thank you so much for inquiring. We look so looking forward to working with you. Feel free to schedule a time to call here. And then maybe have, again, an email that goes out 3 days later if you haven't heard from them yet. And then at the end of it, you would have a task for yourself to archive the lead. Okay, so that would be like a very basic idea. So in order to build that out, you would just come in and create a new email template. Give it a subject line. Oh, I'm in all caps. Okay, so we say thank you for inquiring. We can add in their first name. Looking forward to working with you. Feel free to book a consultation call here. And then you would add your hyperlink for your scheduling and then add your email signature. Okay. Be in touch soon. So maybe some easy way to set expectations with them, set next steps, make it very clear, thank them. That would be like a very basic way to initially inquire or initially reply to your inquiries. So we've always got to give our templates a good title, okay, too. This is like my pro tip that I always say when you're building out all of these gorgeous templates for your automations, you are absolutely going to want to give them a good title so that you can quickly find them in your list of many options. So we're going to say this is our basic new inquiry email. Okay, so this looks good to me. The only thing I would change here is I would add my scheduling link, which maybe that would be helpful for you guys to see. So I'll show you once you build out scheduling, it's very easy to come in here and just copy the link. So this link has been copied now. And I'm going to pop back into my email template, my basic new inquiry, and post my link. Oops. Okay, so that's how you would do that. And you can, of course, change any of the fonts and things here too. You can even add attachments to your email templates. So if there's some kind of file that HoneyBook doesn't send in automations, this is kind of a hacky way to get around it. If there's some kind of file that you would like to send that a brochure or a questionnaire doesn't fit the bill for, you could do that by just attaching the file to your initial email that you send here. Okay, so that's all built out. So that's my first step. And then maybe I wanted to build out a questionnaire or a brochure as well. If you guys are not familiar with brochures, I love this file in HoneyBook. It is my most favorite. I can show you just a quick sample of what it might look like if you were able to sit down and create some really beautifully branded images for your business and set next steps and all that good stuff. So this is just one example of what a brochure file could do for you. It's still loading. There we go. So you can add imagery. You can add text. So you can use it to set next steps for your clients. You can leave placeholders for text. So if you're like a designer and you need to send proofing documents, you can use these images or these image blocks as kind of placeholders for yourself. So there's a lot of different formats for it. When you go to build this out, you can have side-by-side images. You could do for a proofing document, maybe you would do images and then a bit of text and then images again, and then a bit of text. And then maybe you would ask some questions of your clients about the above options. Okay, so that's just one example of how you could do it. And the text would maybe stay the same from client to client because you're just prompting them to check out options 1, 2, 3, and 4, but the images are always going to be variable. So you just leave those as placeholders to upload the images later on. Okay, just one quick example. This file is very advanced in terms of what I see most people doing in their business. So it's not that it's complex, it's just that there's a lot of customization. So it does take a little bit of time to sit down and do it. So brochures can be a welcome packet, a pricing guide, a million different things. We actually have several webinars on this topic alone. I could sit here for an hour and talk all about it. So you guys are not here for that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is just an idea of what this file could do. Okay, you can display your pricing and packages to your clients and allow them to select what options or what packages they're interested in. So you can start to see, again, your gears are turning hopefully with project types connected to people inquiring on the contact form, letting you know what package they're interested in. Now you send them a tailored brochure outlining that package with some add-on options, displaying this to them, and it's all sent automatically based off of their selecting that project type from that contact form. Or maybe you say, everyone who fills out the contact form, I want them to get a general brochure because I only have 4 packages. So this is another example. I have this great gal. She like blew up on Instagram because she does flower preservation and she makes them into coasters. And she blew up on Instagram and she doesn't even have a website. She literally just has her HoneyBook contact form. on her website or on her Instagram bio. And that's where you inquire and you select how many coasters you want. Those are her project types, how many coasters. And if you need something special, there's a field to enter that too. And then she has a brochure automatically sent out where her clients can go through and select how many coasters they want, if they want coasters and a wall hanging, if they want different things, a ring holder, all these different options that she has. And they just go through and select it, and you can even allow them to select the quantity. So that's what she does. She basically is just getting order forms submitted through HoneyBook because of the contact form connected to automations with a brochure file sent. She literally just has a one-step automation that sends the brochure, which is essentially just like an order form for her business. And she's just taking orders. It's crazy. So that's just one example. There's so many different ways you can do this, right? So these are the options when you're building out a brochure. You can add content, which is text and images. You can have questions where you ask whatever you want from your clients. And then you can have your services and pricing displayed as well. And then within that service and pricing, you can allow your clients to select one. They are required to select one. They can select more than one. You can allow them to select quantities. Okay, so those are all the options that are here in terms of how your clients interact with this file. Okay, so get all your templates set up ahead of time. Obviously, we can go really advanced if you're not someone who uses a pricing guide or a welcome packet or anything like that today. Maybe put the idea of brochures on the back burner just for now and start with something a little bit more simple, like just sending a thank you email to your new inquiries, just to kind of get your feet under you and get confident with the automations tool. Just start with that at the beginning. But of course, if you're someone who uses a pricing guide or a welcome packet or anything, a proofing document, brochures are the HoneyBook solution for that with an interactive version inside of HoneyBook. So you're not having to do it through PDFs or whatever other document you might be using. So definitely take a look at our YouTube channel for more brochure resources. If you guys are interested in anything like that, I will post the link to our YouTube channel right now in the chat so that you guys can check that out if that interests you. Okay, so once you have your project type set up, you connect it to your contact form. And there's a couple different ways you can connect it to your contact form, right? Then the third step, and I told you this is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. So just be ready for that. You're going to build out your email templates. You're going to build out your questionnaire files. You're going to build out your brochure files. And again, every time you send a brochure or a questionnaire, it's going to need to come with an email. So for example, I have like an example of like an online course that I might do through HoneyBook using automations. I've got module 1, so this is week 1, week 2, and week 3. And for each of these, I also have an email template entitled module 1, module 2, module 3. And those are my emails that connect to my brochure. Those are the emails that I want to send with that file. Okay, so for each file, each questionnaire or brochure, you're going to want to also have an email that goes with it. And the easiest way to do that is to give it a good title that makes it super obvious so that when you get to the automations page, there's no guessing game. Okay, so those are our first 3 steps. Now we have 2 more left, and we've got a little under 20 minutes to go through it. So I'm going to dive in. We're finally getting to the automations page. So this webinar actually is a great example of the distribution of time for even you guys when you take this information and try to sit down later on and build this out for your business. The majority of the time is not spent on the automations page itself. It's all this pre-work to make sure that by the time you get here, you're set up for success. Okay, so now that we're on this page, we can take a look at some that are already built out. We can see we have the ability to automate via contact form with this column right here. So this drop-down menu is going to show me my project types. So this is why we built out those project types, because once you connect it to your contact form, now I can say, maybe this new inquiry automation is actually my new inquiry automation for my package B option. So I want to find package B in my project types and connect it to this specific automation meant for those specific people. And you can connect multiple here. So maybe my logo, portfolio, and print people are all similar enough that they can receive the same kinds of follow-up emails, communication, files, etc. So you can select multiple options here. If you find that you're selecting all of them, I would actually encourage you to do the default for contact forms. So you can choose to automate using the project types that you established, or you can say, my project types don't matter that much to how I communicate to my clients. Rather, I would like all of my clients who fill out the contact form to receive this kind of 3-step new inquiry flow. And then from there, I can tailor their experience. But when I'm just communicating early on with my inquiries, I don't need to do something super, zoned in and specific for whatever project they're inquiring about. Maybe you don't know what package they're even interested in, or maybe they don't know what package they're even interested in until you've had some kind of consult call. So your first line of defense is actually to get that consult call scheduled. And you can do that with a 3-step, email sequence sent to everyone who fills out your contact form. Okay, so there's different options for how to go through this. It totally depends on your business. So again, if the project type thing doesn't make sense for your business, you probably don't need to do steps 1 and 2 that I went through. You'll just want to make sure that all of those templates that we talked about are already set up. And then maybe in the future, you can fine tune it later on for the specific project types. It totally depends. And there's a lot of options there for you, right? So you just got to sit down and kind of map things out and make sense of it for your own business. So that's how you would automate via contact form. Now let's build one out. Okay, so this is what the new builder looks like. First things first, I always recommend giving it a good title again. So maybe let's say this is going to be our logo automation. And we're going to add our first action. So you can see the steps that I mentioned that are available are listed out here. We can send an email. We can create a task for ourselves. So this is going to be where you would maybe add a reminder for yourself to call the individual, or archive the lead because you haven't heard back from them yet, or something like that. Any kind of internal task that you need a reminder for, that would be one of these tasks. And then you can send a file. And when I click send a file, it gives me the option of a brochure and a questionnaire like we've been talking about. So you can send an email, create a task, send a brochure, or send a questionnaire. And when you send a brochure or send a questionnaire, you need to send an email as well. Okay. So let's say we're going to send an email first, and we have all of our emails over here on the right-hand side. So we kind of switched it a little bit. All of the preferences and settings are now going to live in this right-hand menu. So this is the new builder, right? We talked about how there's a couple different changes to automations, the name change, the builder, and the design is new now. And then you also have the ability to preview and edit. So for example, where's our basic, there we go, our basic new inquiry. So let's say I want to choose this one, but I also see there's this little eyeball icon. So when I click this, this is part of the new feature, right? So I can click this eyeball, and it's going to take me into a preview of what this email looks like. And I can either choose to edit this template for this specific workflow. So again, this will not affect the master template for this email. None of the changes you make inside of the automation will impact the template itself. It will just be essentially creating a new instance for this specific automation. So I can edit this, or because I just wrote it, I know that this is good to go. So I'm just going to use this template. Okay. And then let's say my next step, I'm going to send a brochure, and I can choose what brochure I want to send. Maybe I want to send my welcome guide, and see, I need to select my email. So right off the bat, I have all these options over here. You're just going to go through kind of step by step. And you'll notice as I make changes over here, the script and the writing is going to change for each step. So immediately after the automation is activated, it's going to send an email. And then it says immediately after previous step is complete, I'm going to send the brochure. But maybe I actually want to require approval for this brochure before sending it. So this is where I'm going to say, rather than HoneyBook automatically sending this as soon as whatever trigger I choose occurs, I want HoneyBook to let me know that that trigger has occurred. And I had originally kind of set the intention that this task or this file or this email needs to be sent but I just want the system to run it by me first so that I can maybe make a change to the email before it sends, either skip the step altogether, maybe remove the workflow in its entirety. So there's options. When it says require approval before sending, it's basically saying, giving you the flexibility to not do what you thought you would do. So as you're getting comfortable with automations, sometimes I think it can be a good idea to require approval for every single step. That way, just while you're starting out, that way nothing will ever send without you realizing it. Obviously, the idea with automations is for things to send without you realizing it. That's the time-saving aspect, right? You don't have to be constantly present on your computer trying to do things. The system is going to be running like a well-oiled machine for you. However, when you're first getting set up with automations, I feel it too. It is a little bit scary to let go of the reins and let go of control. And what if something sends at the wrong time? And what if the wrong message goes out? What if somebody already let me know that they're not going to move forward with working with me, and then I send them a pricing guide, super awkward. So there is this built-in mechanism to give you automatic peace of mind as well, and that is the require before sending. So if that's something that you guys want to try out, for my new automation users, I encourage you to just basically mark every single step as approved before sending. And then that way you'll be able to essentially test your gut instinct if what you think can be automated can truly be automated. Okay, so just toggle that on for basically every task, and then nothing will go out without you approving it. So it'll still be relatively manual. It's just that everything is queued up, and that way you can just kind of test your gut instinct to make sure that you can truly automate your process. Okay, and then we have our when. So we can say however many days, minutes, hours, weeks after. There's also the before, but after is all of these options, okay? Automations activated is basically when someone submits a contact form, if you have connected the contact form like we were just checking out, or once you manually apply the automation to a project. Okay, so that's going to be that trigger. Project end date is one of the details that's inside of the project details tab. Same thing for project date. After previous step is complete, it's obviously based off of whatever step came before. Contract is signed, super straightforward. Questionnaire submitted, straightforward. Invoice paid in full, that's going to be every single payment due date has been completed. First payment is made, very straightforward. Project moved to completed, which, as some of you might know, is actually not an automated step in HoneyBook. So you would essentially build in part of your process to manually move projects to the completed stage when you knew that this step needed to be triggered, if that's how you wanted to build that out. Brochure is submitted. We were just looking at brochures. So that's once they've gone through that file, answered the questions, chose any packages, whatever they need to do there, and hit submit. And then all required signatures have been signed. So those are your trigger options for after something happens. And then there's a couple before options, and those are just based around the dates of the project. So you could say before the project end date or before the project date. Okay, so those are your options on triggers. Now back to the preview and edit. So we can go ahead and select our email. So maybe we're going to do our module 2 email, and we can preview and edit here. And again, this is going to pull up our example, and we can go ahead and just edit this email. Maybe I decided I wanted to add my email signature, and maybe I want to change and remove this initial paragraph. And maybe I want to change the subject line as well. And now I'm going to use this template. Okay, so now I've basically used that template as a jumping off point for this new brochure that I'm sending, but I know that it was close enough. I just needed to tweak a couple things. I don't necessarily need that template in my master template section. I just want to use it for this automation. That's just an example of the preview and edit ability that you have. You can also drag and drop your steps. You can duplicate steps. So if you wanted to do the same thing, but maybe for this version of it, you just want to do a different email. So you're going to use your module 3 email instead. You could easily do that. And then this one, you wanted it to be however many, you wanted it to just be a different trigger or something like that. So this is what you would do when you go in to actually build out the automation, but you can see how once you have the project types and the contact form set up and all your templates built out, by the time you get here, you're just kind of dragging and dropping the different things to happen at different points in your communication with your clients. Okay, so pretty straightforward there in terms of building these out and deciding when certain things need to happen and being able to preview and edit the content of this specific emails that you're sending. So emails are the only thing that you can preview and edit. You wouldn't be able to do that with your files. So you do want to make sure your brochures and questionnaires are set up and good to go before you get here. But the emails you can always adjust. And then you're pretty much ready to go. So we can go ahead and save this. It's giving us a little notification that we have unsaved changes. So we'll go ahead and save this. And then we're going to bump back out to the automations page. And now that you've built it out, you need to decide when you want that workflow to be applied to a project. So we did project types. Okay, step number 1, project types. Step number 2, contact form. Step number 3, build your templates, whether it be brochures and questionnaires and emails. Okay, 4th step is actually building the automation. And then step number 5 is going to be actually applying the workflow. So you can do that a couple of different ways. The first way, which I've been hyping up the entire time, is through the contact forms. You can attach it through the project types or based off of contact form submission as a whole. Okay, there's one other option. You can manually apply a workflow to a project. So let's go into a project and check out how we can do this. Okay, so if your client had filled out the contact form and you had the automation set to trigger based off of either project type or automatic, default contact form submission, the workflow would automatically trigger. So that's like the truly automated version of using it, which is why that's what I was suggesting, because that's, letting go of control a little bit more while still having all that customization, of course. It's taking the manual work off of it, because the other option is literally coming into the project. So you have to remember to come into the project, come down here, click automations, and then you have your automations list to apply from there. So with your new inquiries, it's pretty simple to just say, I know all my new inquiries need to go through this 3-step sequence and you don't need to manually do it. The situation where you might manually be doing it is like post booking, because you don't necessarily know when you're going to get to the point where the invoice is paid or what package they're going to book or something like that. There's lots of different things that can kind of happen organically, and maybe you want to leave room for you to go in and manually apply a workflow instead, an automation instead. I'm still learning too. It's tricky. So maybe you want to leave room for yourself to do that manually. You can absolutely do that. And when you get to this screen to apply the automation, you'll notice the quick apply, which will basically send right away. So if that first step is a send automatically after workflow is activated, when you hit quick apply, that will send. So just know that. Or you can do the customize and apply option. So this is one of the new features of the automations tool as well, is that when you get to applying the automation, you can also customize. So let's say right off the bat that this client you're about to attach this workflow for does not need module 3, and maybe you actually want to switch module 2 to be first, and this final thank you email you actually want to say something different. So you come in here and maybe you actually want to use a completely different email template altogether. So you're going to use your other thank you email. This one looks better. So you're going to go ahead and attach that. And now you're going to apply this kind of reworked version of the automation to this specific project. Okay. So you have the ability to do that. You can even add additional steps. So you can get really creative now in terms of how you want to customize, whether you're in the automation builder itself or you're attaching the automation to a project. Okay, so those are the biggest changes. You'll notice there's no changes to the triggers. It's really just the changes to the builder and then the changes to the ability to preview and edit, whether you're in the builder itself or you're going to apply that automation to a specific project manually. Okay, so that is everything. Whew, that is a lot of information. And I know you guys have been kind of helping each other out in the chat. I see I have 40 questions, which is awesome. I definitely won't have time to be able to go through all of these. So if you guys want to hop into the question area and upvote the questions that you feel like are most relevant for you, that'll help me kind of prioritize them. So I'll go through and look at the most upvoted ones. So far, the most upvoted one is from Kelly about how she can best utilize automations to make her business as streamlined as possible. Hopefully, I've given you guys a lot of good ideas around how to do that throughout the entire webinar. So hopefully that question was answered. Anthony had asked, will HoneyBook create more complex versions of automations, such as if-then scenarios, or tasks that can be completed in tandem, or tasks that can be turned on and completed before a previous step has been completed? So obviously we just came out with this update and none of those changes were included. So it's definitely something that we, are aware of and considering, but not necessarily on the roadmap currently. But absolutely, we would love for this tool to work for everyone in those more kind of advanced settings, 100%. Okay, Deb, great question. How can I apply multiple automations to a project? So that is actually something that is not possible. So that's something you need to consider when you're building out your automations, is where can you combine steps into one automation? Where should you maybe include a task, to add a new workflow at the end of another workflow, removing one workflow and adding the next. I keep saying workflow, removing an automation and adding the next automation. So you cannot have multiple automations running at once, just because, as you can imagine, there would be a lot of conflicts of steps going on. And even from your perspective, to create those different nuances as you're building it out would just be incredibly complex. So rather, what we would recommend that you do is, if you need multiple steps to be happening at the same time, just build it as one workflow. Or you can kind of take like bite-sized chunks of it to say, like, this is my new inquiry flow, and this is just, 3 emails. And then I have my pre-booking automation where it's 2 emails and 1 brochure. And then I have my post-booking automation where it's a thank you email and maybe a questionnaire to ask for feedback. And then, you have your email where you ask for referrals or something. So just take it as kind of steps of your process can be a good way to do that. And that'll make sure that you don't have to have multiple automations running at once, but rather, you're able to kind of take it in bite-sized chunks that way. So hopefully that answers your question, Deb. I see another question that got a lot of votes from Grace. She says, can I apply an automation? Oh, I lost it. Can I apply an automation through the HoneyBook Gmail integration if a customer doesn't come through the contact form? Yeah, absolutely. So when you add a project to HoneyBook through the Chrome extension, they'll be added as an inquiry in the system, and you would just manually apply the workflow like we just did. So you would go into that project and manually apply the workflow rather than having it trigger based off the contact form. So that would be your workaround for that. Since the contact form is what triggers the workflow, they would need to fill out the contact form in order to truly automate that process. But if you have someone who's added through the Chrome extension, you can definitely manually add the workflow as well. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Can a payment be made through a contact form and an appointment link be added? So payment cannot be made through a contact form currently. Like I mentioned, there's no instant booking option with HoneyBook. So the closest you can get is having a brochure automatically trigger with pricing options and services for your clients to select once a contact form is submitted. And then, as you may or may not know, when your clients select a package or a series of packages or add-ons from that brochure, HoneyBook automatically drafts up a proposal for you with all of their selections already added in. So all you have to do is hit send. So there's basically just one extra step in the process. They'll submit the contact form. You don't have to touch that. The brochure automatically sends via the automation. You don't have to touch that. They submit the brochure. You don't have to touch anything there. The proposal is automatically created. You don't have to touch anything there. You just have to send it to the client, and then they pay through that. So that's the option, the kind of the quickest option. And that's where your project types will really come in to help you, because you can ask even specifically from your client. Say you have your pricing right on your website, you could say in the contact form, which package are you interested in based off of our pricing page, and then have them inquire. And that's the brochure they get with maybe a couple add-ons. And then immediately after, they would get the ability to pay and sign from there. In terms of adding, let me X out of this. In terms of adding, a scheduling link to the contact form, the workaround that I recommend is it's a little bit hacky. So just the same way that we copied the scheduling link to attach it to the email template, inside of the contact form, under that settings section, there is the ability to reroute your clients once they've completed the form to your own custom URL. And you could have the custom URL be your HoneyBook scheduling link. So they fill out the contact form. Maybe at the bottom of the contact form, you decide to add a little bit, a little blurb. So you can add some content. So maybe you add some text here that says, like, once you've submitted this form, you'll be rerouted to a page where you can select a time that works best for us to chat. And then you could have the reroute be that scheduling link. It won't force them to schedule a time, but it will give them that option. So that's a kind of a hacky way to do that. So hopefully that answers that question. And let me see what else. Terrence says, will HoneyBook offer multiple scheduling features for clients and prospects to choose from soon? Video, call, in person, other. So yeah, currently the way it's set up is basically you set the parameters of how you'd like to meet with your client. And then based off of what you'd like to do, you decide to choose a specific scheduling link and share that with them. There's no option currently for your clients to select their preference. It's more about how you prefer to meet with your clients. So you could create multiple different versions of the scheduling link that have the same availability or varying availability based off of when you want to meet with them. And then maybe have a question in your contact form that says, for our first meeting, how would you prefer to meet? Or for all of our meetings, how would you prefer to meet? And you could have that drop down list. And then based off of their kind of manual response there, you could decide what scheduling link you wanted to send to them later on. Obviously, you wouldn't have like an if-then trigger where that would trigger the correct scheduling link to show up, but you could choose to include whatever link best suits their indication in the contact form in whatever email you decide to send them afterwards. Okay, you guys, thanks again so much for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.